Good morning. Today, my message is entitled God's Perfect Peace. This week, we witnessed harrowing scenes on the television from Spain. I don't know whether you saw them. A distraught nurse begging people to stay at home. People suffering from the virus lying on the floor of hospital corridors in their masks. In Italy, the situation is even worse. According to some experts, the UK is 2 weeks behind Italy. This week I heard from one of my church members in Swindon that the Great Western Hospital has set up 4 wards dedicated to coronavirus patients. By Wednesday there were 19 confirmed cases and 59 other patients who may or may not have coronavirus in the hospital. Hospital staff, doctors, nurses, auxiliary staff are frightened, and some don't want to go in. Yet they are the ones who are on the front line to defend the population against the disease. And this is just the beginning. It looks like a perfect storm. What do our doctors and nurses need at such a time as this? Staff are already overstretched, equipment is in short supply, ventilators, hand gels, masks. Morale is low. Their work is certainly appreciated. Nando's expressed its appreciation this week, apparently, by delivering free chicken to the hospital. People have been donating money. Hundreds of thousands signed up to an NHS volunteer scheme. Thursday evening, applause rang out across the nation for the work that they are doing. But the reality is grim, and it looks likely to get even grimmer. So the question I want to address this morning is, how can our doctors and nurses even function in such a time as this? Where do you find the psychological, emotional, and spiritual resources to deal with such a situation? Is it even possible? Or is it duty, training, resilience that enables them to serve in the heat of battle? Or do they simply have to go through it on autopilot, whatever emotion, frustration, even exhaustion they might be feeling? Where do you get the strength to get through the night shift or through the day? The prophet Isaiah wrote the following verses in Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. You keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you. It's about the relationship that God wants to have with each one of us. You keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you. But is it possible to have perfect peace in a perfect storm? What kind of a prayer life do you need to have? What kind of intimate connection with God enables someone to have perfect peace in a situation like this? A couple of years ago, I was among a group of pastors who spent a week shadowing some chaplains at Florida Hospital in Orlando, not far from Disney World. Among the 16,000 employees of those 8 Adventist-run hospitals, there are 30 chaplains. One of the chaplains, a former US Marine, explained to us how, in the emergency department, his role is to breathe calm into chaotic situations. Just imagine sitting with someone who has just lost a loved one in a freak car accident, trying to be a calming spirit, soaking up their pain, simply listening to them or being with them in their despair and confusion and loss. Imagine doing that as your day job, day in, day out. Now, I don't know how these chaplains are coping at the moment, or how they will cope as the death toll from COVID-19 mounts. But I do know that people like this and people working in the health and care sectors right now need strength that comes from a source beyond themselves. Those who are going to do battle on our behalf with this invisible killer need to have their mind stayed on him. It's a question we all need to ask ourselves. Is my mind stayed on God? Maybe you wonder what you should be doing right now. Should you still be going out at all? Should you be going into work? Should you be visiting your elderly relative or neighbour? Should you be volunteering to help the NHS? Should you be out there delivering food parcels to people who are self-isolating? And what are the risks? As a pastor, I ask myself these kind of questions. Should I be calling up the crematorium and volunteering to bring comfort to people who have lost loved ones? Should I be over at Gloucester Royal or in the hospital in Cheltenham working as a chaplain? Should I be mobilising church members to deliver food parcels for refugees and asylum seekers on behalf of organisations like Gareth and the Harbour Project? Or is it my role to support the congregations here in Cheltenham or down in Swindon? Business as usual, but online. It's a very strange and unnerving situation. And stranger still is that the fear of catching or spreading the disease neutralizes all of our normal responses. Call a meeting. Can't do that. Visit someone at home. Better to stay away. Go and see someone in hospital. Not really the best idea at the current time. Go to the crematorium. Really? What would Jesus do? Is my mind stayed on him? Am I at peace? There's a story in the Bible about peace, and it's found in Mark chapter 4, verse 35. If you'll let me read for you. On that day, when evening had come, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. Picture it. The hardened fisherman disciples were terrified in the middle of the storm on Lake Galilee, a lake they knew so well. And Jesus was in the middle of a whirlwind, waves gushing over the boat, wind whistling around his ears, and he was asleep on the cushion, at perfect peace in a perfect storm. You know, peace is a term fused with our understanding of who Jesus is. He is the Prince of Peace. He is the unique, one-of-a-kind Son of the God of Peace. He's the one who said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." And he came to effect reconciliation between God and man, resolve the enmity between God and mankind, and once more establish peace. And there he is, on the boat, in the middle of the storm, asleep on the cushion, in perfect peace. Verse 38. And the disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Yes, Jesus can calm the storms in our lives and in our hearts. Verse 40. And Jesus said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" The disciples here display both types of fear that I referred to last week. Terror in the face of the storm on the one hand, and overwhelming awe at the divine power displayed by Jesus on the other. In the storms of our lives, we must remember that God is so much greater than whatever winds are whipped up around us. Whatever the storm measures on the Beaufort scale, whatever the earthquake measures on the Richter scale, whatever ranking the UK has in the coronavirus league table that we're all consulting every day, God is so much greater. Jesus calmed the storm. This week, we went out for our daily exercise one day onto Cleve Hill, the highest point in Gloucestershire, 1,083 feet high. From there, you get magnificent views across the valley to the Malvern Hills, to May Hill, the Black Mountains, even on a clear day to the Brecon Beacons. I think that from the hilltop or the mountain top, you have a truer idea of the scale and grandeur of God's creation, and that reminds you of how great God is. And when we realize how great He is, when our mind is stayed upon Him, then and only then can we sleep soundly in the midst of the storm. Only then can we draw from the psychological and emotional and spiritual reservoir that God makes available to us to face our everyday. Not because we're oblivious of the burdens and responsibilities and exertions of the offices or jobs we hold, but because we recognize that although we are totally out of our depth, although the situation that we're going through seems totally out of control, and it's certainly beyond our control, it's not beyond His control. In Jesus' last words to the disciples at the Last Supper, as He was about to be arrested, and He knew it was coming, abandoned by His followers and given up to be crucified, Jesus left His disciples a legacy. And that legacy was His peace. The words are recorded in John's Gospel, chapter 14, verse 27. "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." Jesus' legacy, His gift, was not the gift of a calm temperament,